our second session will be from codemantra with Mark McCallum and Ian Smith, and we're delighted to have them. They're going to be talking about the challenges of PDF bulk auditing and bulk conversion. We know that PDFs are a bit of a bugbear across the sector, so we thought we'd invite codemantra along to discuss their products and their tools, especially accessibility insights that we thought would be particularly of interest to you, and this does a fantastic job. So Ian and Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Hugh. I'm Mark McCallum, as Hugh has introduced us. I'm the UK end of codemantra, and Ian is the head of and creator of our accessibility team and tool set in Chennai. For that reason, Ian is going to do most of the talking in this part of the webinar. He's the brains of the process after all. And as Hugh has said, we're going to really focus in on the kind of nitty-gritty of PDFs, making them accessible, auditing them to understand the scope of your project, and then the actual processes involved in remediating them. And indeed, we'll also cover off some other document formats we remediate, EPUBs, Word, Excel, PowerPoint as well. But PDF is the bulk of what we're confronting. And from both a complexity and volume standpoint, it's the most challenging and most important document format. Ian will talk about how we've addressed those challenges and through the platform Accessibility Insight, and how really Accessibility Insight came into being because of the challenges that we face when we started to work in the field. We spent about 5 years now producing accessible documents for customers, and that's why we are where we are now, both in terms of knowledge base, but also in terms of developing the technology and tools that we use to create accessible content. We're very much focused in this session on practical solutions to making bulk remediation of PDFs an easy and straightforward process. Couple of things just to add in here. A few people I recognized a few names from the attendees from a presentation we did, thanks to Alistair, a year and a half ago. It's fair to say that for those of you who remember that presentation, accessibility, the platform that you saw, which we've now named Accessibility Insight, has changed significantly since then. What we don't have time to do today, or really propose to do today, is to get deeply into the kind of technical processes that we utilize to manage PDF audits and remediation. But obviously we can return to those in the discussion time if people want to know more, understand that in greater detail. But on that note, I'm now going to hand over to Ian.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you, Hugh, and everyone for allowing us to present today. I'd like to start with the topic of document accessibility audits. When we first started providing accessibility services, we were asked to perform an audit of 1,000 PDF files. And again, keep in mind, this was maybe 5 years back. At that time, we, like many others, were using Adobe Acrobat in order to complete this request. We had to deploy 10 staff members for roughly a week to audit each file individually, and then consolidate the data from these 1,000 documents to finally come up with this consolidated audit report. If you can skip to the next slide. And as you can see now, Mark had alluded that we've developed a product that should have been a little animation running, but developed a product that will do this auditing in bulk. And as a result, then the third slide, you can go ahead and go to that next slide, is the detailed audit that is created. So, what used to take us roughly a week and 10 people is now done in just a matter of minutes. The process was just too cumbersome and slow for customers with deadlines. And it was very obvious that there was a real problem with the tools available not being suitable to meet the growing demand for accessible documents. as a result of that painstaking process, that's why we built Accessibility Insight, which is presented, one facet of Accessibility Insight is presented here, which is the detailed audit for PDF in this case. But Mark alluded to the fact that we also have the same capability for Word, Excel, PowerPoint, as well as EPUB. And again, we can do that auditing in a matter of minutes, not days, using our Accessibility Insight solution. Having addressed the challenge of performing these bulk accessibility audits, we then needed to address the challenge of performing bulk remediation. We needed to do that to ensure efficiency and consistent quality. The origin of PDF, as I think many of us may know, is it was originally created to retain the document's look and feel. It wasn't meant to carry structure. That was later changed by Adobe, but we also know that the structure is essential for users of assistive technologies to actually make equal use of that document, right? So by Adobe finally adding the tag structure capabilities to the PDF format, that enabled us to make these accessible, but that implementation within Acrobat requires a lot of technical expertise to ensure that a PDF has actually been remediated, especially when it comes to the more complex documents with highly designed pages, your complex tables, nested lists, and various types of links and things such as your TOC, your web URLs, references or footnotes, and so on and so forth. Go to the next slide. So a proper, an appropriate structure and the logical reading order. We have to replicate the visual cues in a document that render them accessible, so that when the document's read by a reading device, the user isn't confronted by a flat, decontextualized, unordered list of lines, but rather a structured, ordered, and emphasized flow that allows them to properly comprehend the information in a document. It's not always easy to do with Acrobat because the person performing this task must have a deep understanding of how to build this structure. As I've shown on the left-hand side, if any of you have used Acrobat, you are familiar with that tagged structure. It's daunting for people or intimidating for people that are not familiar with that, XML or HTML type of structure. But on the right side is what we've developed with the Accessibility Insight. We feel it's much more intuitive. It allows the user to focus purely on ensuring that the content has been classified with its proper structure and the logical reading order. The platform takes care of all of the technical nuances, such as building that tag structure that we were speaking about, for things like your nested lists, and ensuring that they comply with the WCAG guidelines. It also deals with your complex tables. If you've ever tried to build a complex table structure, it's not an easy task. Or even something as simple as adding in an image description. So the platform Accessibility Insight takes care of all of those technical aspects behind the scenes. This approach is what ensures that consistent quality and increases the speed of which the remediation can be accomplished. So from the days of having 10 staff spend a week just to audit 1,000 PDF docs, we are now able, for example, to audit and remediate 15,000 pages of prospectus, course content, and administrative documents for the University of Westminster in about 8 days. We did that just at the end of last month. When remediating documents, remediation requires alt text descriptions. That can add another level of workflow complexity. Does the content owner write it, this text box, or is someone else? Because of our work in the publishing industry, we understand the importance of efficient workflow and consistent output. Therefore, we've included this functionality to allow any user of the platform to write or commission and manage their alt text as and when the projects need it. The platform provides a database of all of these images or objects that need this alt text, and the writer then just has to complete those descriptions before the document can be fully remediated. Sometimes the alt text can be generated by the machine learning we utilize in the platform. As an example of that, we had a 3-month project for one of the world's largest educational publishers to bulk remediate about 180 student supplements and instructors manuals. These particular documents, they contain 78,000 images and nearly 1 million complex equations. All of these images and equations required alternative descriptions, obviously, which then needed to be inserted into the document. This in itself would have taken an eternity with Acrobat, not to mention the other aspects of making these documents accessible. But we can manage the alt text creation and review process in the platform, which then automatically inserts these descriptions in their proper locations for those images or equations. So really, the point of telling that story is to highlight the key drivers, in my view, to make documents accessible, make document accessibility as disruptive as possible, and to deliver documents that meet the ambitions of true accessibility, not just enough, right? Those drivers are innovation and automation to drive efficiency and consistency and flexibility in order to utilize the best possible sources of alt text to bring the document to life. So with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions.
Thank you so much, guys. That was fantastic. It's really good to get a little insight, as it were, into accessibility insight. We talked about the formula, which I must admit that seeing insights, I've seen it at various stages along the way, and seeing it in its full glory, as it were, now, it's just lovely. After spending many years battling with Adobe Acrobat, it's actually something that makes Adobe Acrobat actually work and be intuitive. Actually finding anything or doing any process on Adobe Acrobat is quite a painful experience. So it's nice to see something that actually makes it a bearable experience. But questions coming through. Kevin asked, remediating the inaccessibility of PDFs at scale reduces the impetus of the organization to move to more accessible by default formats. Discuss. A challenging question there from Kevin. I'm guessing that there are a lot of universities out there that do have a lot of content that they need to work with. I know that PDFs before a certain point, before 2018, are an exception now, but there is a lot of content out there. From your conversations with universities, are they looking to remediate content at the kind of at scale? What kind of issues are they facing?
Yeah, so I'd say it's it's 50-50. We have some that are content, and they know they should potentially move to a more accessible format such as HTML, but their immediate demand and need kind of has them stuck at the moment of staying with PDF while they figure out further downstream aspects of deploying HTML. Right, a lot of them are custom and they have platforms and the ability to serve the PDFs today, and so they're actively working to modify their delivery system or mechanism to accommodate an HTML version instead of with the PDF. And we have even publishers in that same situation. Publishers I'm engaged with right now, they came with a large-scale PDF remediation need, and during that discussion, they actually took a step back and decided, well, maybe now is the time to make a pivot to HTML, and they are doing so. So this is for those supplements and instructors manuals, the content there. So I think PDF will remain as a large demand, but I think it's mostly, again, because they're trying to figure out a new delivery model for HTML instead of PDF. PDF's been around forever. It's easy. right?
And if I can come in on Kevin's question, I think the part of the presentation where Ian was talking about the creation of the alt text. I mean, we work with a lot of publishers who are, to Kevin's point, completely focused on their forward program and making that accessible, and far less interested in remediating existing titles because of the not least because of the commercial implications of having to do that. But the challenge that they recognize is the very fragmented nature of creating and managing the alt text part of the process, and I think that's probably going to be true in every single industrial sector that we work in and consult with, because who is responsible for writing the alt text? How do you ensure its consistency? How do you ensure it's delivered on time? Those are things that all of our customers are kind of wrestling with, and the platform, and so the platform is designed to address that as much as it is a way of managing bulk remediation. So I think it's I think to answer your question, I think it's both at the same time. There's a legal requirement and impetus that's driven universities we've been working with here to remediate content, and a recognition that they'll have to go a bit deeper beyond the kind of most high profile and used documents that they're going to remediate in order to meet their legal requirements. But as Ian has said, there's also that push now to start to work going forward in a more kind of born accessible way.
Could I just ask, there's a couple of key questions that have come in. Daisy was asking about a particular file that she wanted to show but hasn't been able to share, so perhaps the best thing is for her to email that afterwards. But
yeah, I'll type in our email addresses, by the way.
Yeah. But the two key questions I saw, one was Mike was asking about, is there a sort of remediation guarantee as to what level it would hit? And then the other question related to Kevin's earlier question was, is there a possibility of, instead of bulk remediating PDFs, actually just bulk transforming PDFs to HTML? And quick answers if possible, because we're just about to start the next bit.
Indeed. The answer to the first is, we're able to achieve WCAG 2 AA on your documents. And certainly if there's something that we stumble upon, if through our service we don't achieve that compliance, then we will rectify that situation. So WCAG 2.1 AA. And the second, absolutely, we can do the bulk transformation to HTML or any other structured format for that matter.
That's great and excellent. Thank you for keeping it just in the time as well.